Hey everybody, this is Tom Salemi of Device Talks. Welcome back to the Device Talks weekly podcast. We are back on schedule. We finished Device Talks West last week. We'll review the highlights of it today. We'll have on the podcast Chris Newmarker, of course, myself, Sean Hooley, associate editor of MassDevice, and Brian Bunce, our pharma editor. Once again, we'll go over our high points of Device Talks West. If you have any more of your own, please do share them in the LinkedIn post where you hopefully found this podcast. After our stroll through memory lane, I'll bring in CL Tian. She is the co-founder and CEO of Phiex Technologies. Phiex won the Medtech Innovators Grand Prize at AdvaMed this week, walking away with $350,000. The decision was based upon a vote from the audience, which is a cool feature that MedTech Innovator has been able to do and will do once again at our Device Talks Boston meeting, which is happening on May 10th and 11th of 2023. So congratulations to all the finalists for MedTech Innovator. We reviewed them last week. And special congratulations, of course, again, to Phiex Technologies. I did catch up with CL Tian, and it was great to connect with her. We actually had met once or twice before, and it was great to see that Phiex's very promising technology is getting recognized. And CL will get into the problem, the very big problem Phiex Technologies is trying to solve. Before we begin, I want to remind you that Device Talks Tuesdays continues to roll on. Please join us this Tuesday at 4 p.m. The title of the topic will be Bridging the Gap Between Development and Regulatory Teams. It's brought to you by ICS. You can sign up for it at devicetalks.com. It's free. You can watch it live and ask questions. You can watch on demand and still ask questions. So no risk. This is a no-risk opportunity. Go to devicetalks.com to register for our upcoming Device Talks Tuesdays, sponsored by ICS. All right, without any further delay, let's get this podcast going. All right, you ready for this?
Ready.
Chris Newmarker, how are you, sir?
Doing well, man. Doing well.
You're back at home, all comfy, cozy.
That's
back from
right.
California last week.
That's right. But a good time in California. Really good show that we had out in Santa Clara with Device Talks West. So just busy times. We're definitely in the thick of conference season right now.
Absolutely. We can hit upon a couple of them. I actually stayed in California through Monday, and then on Tuesday, they had an earthquake. And Brian Bunce, we have Brian Bunce and Sean Hooley with us. Brian, did you feel the quake on Tuesday?
I did not. I think I'm too far away in Berkeley, so I didn't notice. Or I slept through it. One of the
two. I was on my bucket list. I want to feel an earthquake. I want like an earthquake that kind of jostles you a bit and then ends pretty quickly. It sounded like the perfect earthquake for me. But
spoken like a true Californian. Yeah, I just slept through that 5-pointer. It's nothing.
I had a former MedTech colleague talk about a bed sliding across the floor. So that's probably not the kind you want to have.
Wow, I'm not interested in that kind of earthquake. Absolutely not.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
Sean Hooley, have you ever been in an earthquake?
I can't say I have.
No. Is it on your bucket list as well?
Low on there, but somewhere.
Yeah, it's probably along the list with like see a tornado in person. Like, no, I don't need that.
Natural disasters in general, I think I'll avoid.
No, that's probably good policy.
Run from a tsunami. No, I think I'll pass on that. Hey, so it's interesting too because we're in the thick of conference season. We had Device Talks West, just great show. I just loved how there just was so much buzz there, just so many like really, really good people to network with. I mean, networking with people I haven't seen in person in years too, which was just fantastic. Sean was at AdvaMed this week, AdvaMed going on in Boston. Me and you, Tom, will be at MD&M Minneapolis next week. One interesting thing with Sean's coverage of AdvaMed was there was like some top executives talking about the Medtech ecosystem, which got me wondering, like, so if MedTech was an animal, and what animal would MedTech be in the healthcare ecosystem?
I would probably make it the elephant, big and powerful, but kind of lumbering and slow moving, not easy to adopt. Does that work? Is that good?
What
would you go with? You thinking cheetah?
I was thinking beaver. It's not like.
And that's the end of our podcast, everybody.
It's not the top of the food chain, but it's industrious, hardworking, reshaping the landscape. It's not like MedTech could overhaul healthcare on its own, but if it offers the right solutions, it could reshape some stuff.
I think the FDA would be the beaver, because I have some beavers near my house that have blocked my path for my kayak, and I can't do a thing about it. So that feels very FDA-ish, don't you think?
Do you have a problem with beavers, Tom?
Not personal problem. No, they dammed up my local river. I'd like to go by, and I can't go by.
That's the natural way of things. They were trying.
I know, but I would like to kayak the rest of the river. That's all I'm saying.
Are you gonna have a beaver skin
anyway?
Next time I see you, Tom?
Just to clear the record, I have no issue with beavers. Sean Hooley's the one who has the issue with beavers, right, Sean?
Yeah, beavers and natural disasters, two things I don't like.
All right, let's get back into DeviceTalks West. Yeah, it was very productive 2 days. A lot of energy, a great time at the Santa Clara Convention Center. People seem to be really happy to be together, and we had a lot of great conversations on stage and off. So thank you to everyone who participated, who attended. Thank you to everyone who sponsored. And thank you to everyone who spoke. We had over 50 fantastic speakers there over the 2 days, and we'll be doing it again next year. Same 2 days, different dates, 18th and 19th of October. So mark off your calendars, and let's make it huge. But we wanted to spend our top 5 time, sort of newsmakers times, just talking about some of the news from DeviceTalks West. And Sean, if you have anything you'd like to share from AdvaMed, that's great. We'll be talking with CL Tian, the CEO of Phiex, which won the Medtech Innovator Award. She'll be on the podcast a little later. So we'll get her story and the story of Phiex, which is a really cool story for device sterilization. But Chris Newmarker, what were a couple of your takeaways from DeviceTalks West?
Well, I'd say, definitely we had some news breaking out of the conference, which was fantastic.
Yep.
I know, Sean, you rushed out a story, out of a talk that Medtronic was doing about, efforts to combat a stroke. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, well, Medtronic sort of announced their soft launch of CoLab, which is a neurovascular effort from its neurovascular business to sort of empower and accelerate startups and newer technologies to get stroke treatment to market faster. And when a giant like Medtronic is operating that, you have a sense that it probably will work and do that. So yeah, they explained it. Dan Voles and Derek Crittenden stood up and sort of launched it in front of I can't speak because I wasn't in every panel, but it was definitely one of the most packed panel rooms. I know, Chris, you were bringing in extra chairs.
That's right. I was rushing to grab chairs from our staff room so we could get more people sat down. There's so many people in there.
I knew I had to be there, so I got some prime real estate in the front row early. So apologies to the other people who didn't beat me there. But no, it was a really interesting chat, and I got to do a little stand-up interview with Dan Voles after to chat a little bit more about it. And it was a really interesting topic and a new initiative that I wonder if, he said it's sort of, they're starting with it in the neurovascular business at Medtronic, but, maybe it'll extend elsewhere. And I wonder if other bigger companies will start to do similar sort of incubators.
Yeah, I had to be in another room at that time, which is one of the frustrating parts of the conference. There was a lot of things that I missed that I wanted to see. But speaking with Dan after, he just said that he'd just been sort of flooded with so many interesting, intriguing ideas from innovators outside of Medtronic that they decided they needed to create some sort of system to process all of these. He couldn't keep just bringing them up to the attention of people in his group because it was kind of distracting. So they needed an infrastructure to sort of rank and to hopefully develop some of these innovative ideas. So very, very glad Medtronic chose DeviceTalks West to make that announcement.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, hundreds of thousands of Americans have strokes every year, so anything we can do to help prevent them more, help treat them more, help get better outcomes out of them, would be great. So it was good news for Medtronic. I don't want to talk too much about Medtronic, but I mean they had another talk at the show with Gio DiNapoli, from their gastrointestinal business that I love it when I'm at a conference and I'm just really learning some things. And he was talking about their GI Genius, artificial intelligence that helps doctors spot potential lesions when they're doing colonoscopies. And it was just fascinating to get a walkthrough of what that how that actually works. That you can see like it just highlighting little things while they're doing going down the the path basically with the process, but I was struck that he said that, as the day goes along, the rate of doctors finding lesions is going down, in the past they did 10 a day, they're up to 15 a day.
Yeah.
Post pandemic. I
mean, I'm thinking as to when my procedure was when I had it done.
Yeah.
Like
was it the afternoon or,
it was right before lunch. So I'm a little worried. Maybe he was hungry, he was a little peckish. I don't know. And something else I learned I didn't know, they don't record video when they do it. Like, so this is like one shot, it's not like they could go back and look at the tape again and see if they missed something. So honestly, we record everything in the world,
right?
Nothing gets by without being recorded.
No recordings around. So, I mean,
there's no VHS tapes.
Yeah, no VHS tapes.
No cell phones either. They're not. Yeah, for sure. But maybe we can figure something out.
you can get a VHS tape of not a VHS. I mean, you can get a recording if they put a camera down your sewer pipe out to the street. I mean, it was kind of reminding me of that. I had somebody come and inspect our sewer line a few weeks ago. I was like, that kind of reminds me, but because he was kind of saying, I'm going down here. Like, look, you got
right.
Yeah,
all
but
right.
anyway.
Yeah, Gio DiNapoli gave a great presentation, and Brett Wall gave another excellent presentation later that same day on bioelectric medicine. And really where Medtronic sees the opportunities there, and talked about their tibial stimulation device, which is being worked in part of their pelvic health group. But more broadly talked about the power of bioelectronic medicine. I'm not normally a presentation guy, but I really, like you said, Chris, I really did enjoy having those two up there and sort of give just a straight, really PowerPoint, really graphic heavy presentation. They were very informative and I thought very engaging.
To piggyback on that one, I like the one from Brett Wall, both of them as well. But the Brett Wall one was interesting because he had this kind of background on early days of Medtronic, like his work on like pacemakers, like battery powered pacemakers, like how they found use, like I think in the 60s, if I recall correctly. And then I think Brett said that he went to go meet Earl like a number of years ago when he was still alive in Hawaii. So it had a lot of interesting kind of like anecdotes woven in, as well as perspective on the company's kind of plans to broaden the use of bioelectric medicine, neuroscience applications.
Absolutely. No, that's a great point. Yeah, we definitely, I think we'll have to build that into future programs as well. And I like those conversations too, because there was nothing going on at the same time. So we could all just sort of sit together and enjoy. But Sean Hooley, what was, you talked about the neurovascular space. Brian, what was something interesting? Brian Bunch, what was something interesting that you covered?
I used to cover the whole like regulatory environment. So I liked a presentation, actually like a panel discussion with Jennifer McKinney from UCLA Biodesign and Kwame Ulmer, who's the managing partner of Medtech Impact Partners. So basically the thesis is like 12 years ago, Europe was moving generally faster, was more transparent, was more predictable in terms of approving medical devices. And a lot of companies, even though the market in Europe is smaller than the US, they would go to market in Europe first. And you'd have this lag of months or years before new technology made it to the market in the US. And then in the intervening 12 years, like the FDA and like industry has worked together or have worked together, and they've kind of ironed out some of those kinks. So probably it's a little bit of a case-by-case basis still, but it seems like overall now most companies focus now on the US to debut innovative technology, kind of like showing like how the the pathway has changed. I think Kwame mentioned how like the de novo pathway has gotten more transparent and predictable as well. So it seems like a lot of changes have happened. A lot more digital technology is now on the market. So interesting hearing the perspective there.
He definitely brings an interesting perspective, having been at the FDA 10 or 12 years ago when we were going through those difficult times. Well, the medtech industry was going through the difficult times with the agency, or more difficult times. And now he's on the flip side, helping companies. So he definitely sort of brings an insider perspective. And Jennifer's just been doing a fantastic job tracking the industry as a whole. And they worked on that study with Boston Consulting Group. So it was a very thorough study that I think, if I can find the link, I'll put it on our show notes so people can find the report that we're referencing.
Yeah, they said it was a quantitative and qualitative view of kind of how the regulatory climate had changed, which is interesting. So I think that wasn't so much the case of the research from 12 years ago that kind of looked at the regulatory environment from Josh Mykower.
Yeah, that was more anecdotal, I believe. So it's definitely a next step. Very cool. Well, it was a good write-up you did, and I'm glad they were part of the conversation. Chris Newmarker, how about you, man? What are some other takeaways from the meeting?
Yeah, we spoke a lot about Medtronic, which definitely brought it to the to the show. But at the same time, we had your interview with Gary Guthardt of Intuitive. I mean, how cool is it that they had just had their earnings call, and then we have him the next day, at the convention center, and they had talked about talked some about how they were looking with their a lot of people think when they think of Intuitive, think of the Da Vinci systems, but they've been making some really great strides with their Ion system, which is this kind of like flexible robot, this articulating robot catheter that can go through all these tortuous airway passages in the lungs to perform biopsies. But they talked some during the earnings call about how they've been looking to expand this into doing ablation, and he talks some more about a DeviceTalks West, saying that the technology there could offer up opportunities for tubular structures outside the lung as well. So just hearing him talk about the Ion tech was just really great. And I think people who care a lot about what Intuitive is doing, they think they missed out some from that talk if they weren't there to see that talk.
Yeah, it was the only time that I've done an interview on stage and the guest gets an ovation before we even started. He got a big round of applause as soon as I introduced him. So people at the show are really enthused to hear about him and to hear where Intuitive's going. And he clearly has a vision of where the industry is headed in terms of surgical robotics. I think he sees the day when it's going to be when surgical robotics almost isn't a necessary term, that robotics and surgery and digital surgery is just going to be just surgery. We're just going to be talking about it as if it's just a normal everyday within the realm of healthcare occurrence. So this definitely was a great conversation, and we'll try to get that one out to folks in some form or fashion in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I already have a story up on medical design outsourcing off of it, and you're right. He, I thought it was interesting that he really didn't want to describe Intuitive as a robotic surgery company. Like they were a medical, medtech innovator, a medical device company, and and him saying that, he thinks in the future, it's just not going to be a big deal to say, oh, it's robotic surgery because it's just going to be so ubiquitous. It's going to be more of a deal when it's like they're not using some kind of robotic feature on you when they're doing a surgery. So I it'll be cool to see how that works out. But I think that is quite a vision. That we're just gonna and hopefully improve the quality of surgery by having these robotic technologies that can like level the playing field, and you don't have to worry as much whether your surgeon had too little or too much coffee, before they came into the operating room. And that'd be great.
Right. And we had other keynote speakers. We opened up with Deb Kilpatrick, co-CEO of Evidation Health. You followed up with your interview with Celine Martin, company group chairman at Johnson & Johnson. Those were two great interviews. And I opened up day two with a great conversation with Leslie Trigg, chair and CEO of Outset Medical.
That was really good.
That was a lot of fun. She's great to talk to. And she brought some photos of the Tableau system that allows for dialysis at the home, and kind of really demonstrated, really reinforced why what they do is so important, that they're able to save people the trips to dialysis centers, give them their lives back, give them that time back. And we followed up that conversation with folks from Outset giving a presentation. This is one of the things I wasn't able to sit in on either, because I was moderating another session, but we had some engineers from Outset Medical talking about their human factor design. And they brought a couple of Tableau systems, and it was just very cool to actually have the technology we're talking about in the building, and have people talk about how they built it and how they make it so intuitive for patients. So thank you to Outset for participating as they did.
Yeah, it was very cool, and she told such a good story about how she got so passionate about that technology, just doing research on, how they could innovate in the dialysis space. That it just really needed some improvement. It can be really tough for somebody who has kidney disease, to have to go to dialysis centers.
Absolutely. And I'm looking at the agenda now. I feel like we could be talking for an hour and a half.
Yes.
We went over everything. But wanted to hit upon Jim Hammerin, who's not with us because he's at another conference. Speaking of busy conference weeks, he's traveling back from
Salt
a conference.
Lake City.
Yeah. He wrote about Avail Med Systems. We had I had a panel discussion with 3 executives from Avail Med Systems, including CEO Daniel Hawkins, about how Avail is moving beyond sort of just using their telecommunications system, not only for sort of medical use, for surgical use or consultation, but really to help the whole product design, the whole engineering part of Medtech, and how they're hoping to give engineers and other product developers better access to surgeons so they can see the surgical field that they're designing for. So Jim Hammerin wrote a great article about that for MDO, which is great to work with a fantastic editorial team like you guys. You're covering all the...
Thanks, man.
No, it's cool. It was great to be part of a conversation. Brian Bunce wrote the article about the FDA, and I'm like, I learned something reading it. I'm like, I don't remember that being said, but that's really cool because I was in such a haze. But you guys kicked butt with the coverage. And Sean Hooley, you made it up on stage. How was that for you?
I did. It was daunting at first, but Tom really helped me through it. It was a lot easier than I thought it would be, but it was more importantly, it was 2 really interesting conversations. One sort of about the clinician or the business to clinician and business to physician relationship, and another sort of about how Abbott's cardiovascular business operates, and both were really interesting conversations, and I enjoyed doing it. So I'm afraid to say that because now you might put me on stage more, but it was a good experience.
No, you're leading a panel in Boston for sure.
Great.
But the medical panel was terrific.
It's onward and up for Sean.
We had Sean's best friend, Nick West of Abbott. Sean, you have any comments you want to make about Liverpool now that Nick can't shoot back?
The only drawback was that we couldn't have those discussions on stage. We had to keep it purely medical and purely professional. No, I'll leave the pod shots for the next time I speak to him.
We had Nick West. He's the chief medical officer. He's been on the podcast before, and divisional vice president of medical affairs for vascular at Abbott. We had on that panel that Sean referenced, we had Farzad Azampour, Senior Vice President of Strategic Innovation at Edwards Life Sciences. And we had Nilesh Patel of Vice President of Medical Affairs at Neuromodulation, Boston Scientific. And they really talked about how devices could help alleviate some of the pressures facing the healthcare system. But I think that the takeaway I got from that was they all really want medical device companies to create devices that actually have an impact and aren't just sort of iterating.
Tom, that was actually a really big theme this week at AdvaMed too. There were a lot of conversations about AI, and I think Dr. West actually was who joked about sort of dumb devices versus smart devices, and maybe not all dumb devices have to be smart. And that's definitely a theme that I think some people are putting AI and machine learning and these certain sensing capabilities into technology that doesn't have to be there. It doesn't really serve a purpose. So that's definitely something that'll be interesting to watch, sort of if it ever hits a wall, I guess.
That's interesting. That's interesting that it carried over. And speaking of AI, I moderated a panel with Jeff Rogers of IBM Research and Matt McDonald, Director of Data Research and Engineering at Boston Scientific, about their AI program and how they're using it to quantify or measure pain in patients. And it was just a fascinating. IBM's helping Boston Scientific sort of process the data that's coming in from patients. And you're not only looking at the pain score, are you a frowny face or a happy face, but more, how are people with pains living their lives, and looking at that whole life image as a better measure for pain. Are you able to walk? Are you able to get up? Are you able to go to work? Are you able to walk the dog? Like, all these things really, really help dictate or determine or at least tell a better story about how people with pain are muscling through, because it's going to be tough to be carrying that burden of pain with you all the time. Well, it was a full show. I feel like I don't want to leave anybody out, but
it's I like how we I think we have a really great process going on here that that like what differentiates us is that what we're doing panels on is informed by like all the news that we're reporting on MassDevice, and all the technology deep dives we're doing on medical design outsourcing, and that it informs these panels. Then we get more news out of those panels. It's this wonderful cycle that's just producing like useful stories on our sites, and I think like really useful panels for our events. So I think people need to check this out if they're not doing it.
If I can make one more mention for Jim, actually, I think it was maybe one of the first panels, first breakouts of the conference was his conversation with Penumbra, and please don't get mad at me if I say it wrong. Sandra Les Enfants, is that right?
That's fine.
Beautiful.
And Jim,
the president of interventional at Penumbra.
Yeah, Jim did a great job with it. She's one of the most engaging speakers I've ever been able to sit in a room and listen to. She could describe grass growing, and it would be interesting. So it was. I would suggest if she ever speaks at any of our events again, that's one reason to come. She was awesome, and Jim did a great job with it.
Yeah, and then one of my favorite moments off stage was, and I actually posted on LinkedIn, was the group of Penumbra employees kind of standing around with probably 8 to 10 people posing in front of a sign at DeviceTalks West, all clearly kind of having a good time and just taking a photo of the time spent together. So it was kind of, to your point, Chris, earlier, it was nice just to see people get together again and sort of enjoy each other's company.
Yeah, absolutely. And and just like, there was like one networking break where I had two people I know very well, or sources that I talk to a lot for our sites, and they're having a debate in front of me about 3D printing. I'm getting like a panel on like sitting out to getting a break. It's just there's just a lot of expertise there. It was very cool.
And we had Chris, while Jim was talking to Sandra Les Enfants of Penumbra, you had your supply chain conversation going on. I was leading a VC conversation. Any takeaways from the supply chain? Getting better? What are people thinking?
The problems are going to last, but I think one of the big takeaways I had from that supply chain panel, which had top supply chain people from Outset Medical and Shockwave Medical, was that their importance in their companies, like the supply chain person, is like way more important now than they were a few years ago. And there's definitely a recognition in the companies that these problems are not going to go away. We've worked out how to keep things going through COVID, but now we're looking at like increasing disruption from climate change. Yeah. We got the Russia-Ukraine war still going on, and there's a lot of work, and a lot of things are transforming. A lot more closer work with suppliers, and even like basing people over at suppliers to, try to keep things moving better. So, it's a new world.
That's an important conversation that we'll probably keep having. The VC panel went well. I do know that one of the VCs connected with a potential investment. They're talking right now, so that's nice too. And
wow.
Kind of nice where we're making some connections, and just.
People making some money. They're getting some
That's
investments.
Right. That's right. Hopefully we'll get a finder's fee. And we had great conversations by Dassault Systems, from Catalyze Healthcare, from Greenberg Traurig. We had more sponsored led discussions from Dojo 5 and Goodwin and Finnegan. And on the next day, we had presentations by TALG Law and Avail, which I mentioned earlier. So lots of great. I'm going through the agendas. I'm trying to mention everybody I can, but I feel like we've summarized the discussion well enough. Brian Bunch, you were sort of you weren't on stage. You were in every room. I seemed to see you there. You were omnipresent. Any other takeaways from the meeting?
It was cool seeing so much energy at the event. I've not been to an event kind of like since before the pandemic. So it kind of seemed like old times. It was kind of cool seeing all the conversations and the social opportunities and the buzz and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it was nice, and we had a nice time on the expo floor on that first night too. It was good to see all of our sponsors down there as well. Medtronic was kind enough to sponsor an event, so fantastic.
Yeah, and I just say, like, Tom and Sean, I've been lucky enough to spend some time with you in person at conferences, but Brian, it was just really cool. I mean, being able to see you in person for the gosh, how many years was it? 7 years we haven't seen each other in person.
Something like that, amazing. 7-8 years. I don't know. It's been a while.
Same thing with Jim Hammerand. It's been about a decade. So I mean, just feels good. That the pandemic kept many of us meeting in person with people, but it's just it was really awesome to see you in person, see Jim in person. Just being able to we talk to each other all the time over Zoom and these remote formats, but it's just it's very cool to just be able to hang out with my colleagues in person. So
hopefully in Boston we can get the entire team together, because Brian and Jim weren't at DeviceTalks Boston, but Danielle Kirsch was, and Danielle Kirsch couldn't make it out to DeviceTalks West, but maybe we can get the whole gang together, or we can go to another restaurant.
Sounds like a plan.
That serves meat on sizzling rocks. Brian, you missed the steakhouse, man.
We didn't have the story about the last party that was here was 2 years ago. On the tables outside in the hotel.
Oh yes.
Our first night we were so worn out, we go to the hotel restaurant outside, and they're like let me wipe the dust off the table,
All right, nobody's eaten out here for 2 years since the accident. Dun, dun, dun. I don't know where that organ music came from. Yeah, that was a nice night though. It turned out that we were all just waving the white flag and saying we'll just sit here. And then our colleagues from the Robot Report came down. They were putting on their own conferences, and it was
fantastic.
It was a good way to start the week. So. All right, everybody. Well, thanks for walking down memory lane and sharing your thoughts of DeviceTalks West with our listeners. Well, CLTN, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Tom. Very excited to see you again, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, I mentioned on the podcast last week when we talked to Paul that you and I had connected while moderating a panel of, I moderated the panel, you were a panelist of young entrepreneurs and executives. And I remember your story about Phiex stuck with me. And I think you are also at DeviceTalks Boston, right? I saw you there.
Yes. We've been doing the conference circuit. So
fantastic. Well, congratulations on being Medtech Innovators Global Grand Prize winner. And quite a bit of excitement at AdvaMed. Did you enjoy your time in the spotlight?
Oh my goodness, Tom, we are so excited. It was thrilling for those people who are used to giving presentations and high stakes presentations, no less. I'm sure you could relate that the lead up to it was not quite that pleasant.
I'm familiar.
Tom, because for us, it wasn't just we weren't just competing on stage, right? That's not how I'm seeing it. Because the issue that we're addressing is so systemic and impacts our entire industry. That was really, I thought of it as a conversation 1 to 400 in the room, right? Including with the folks that we need to be working with so we can get through this together. So yes, surely the stakes felt very, very high. We're very relieved to and honored to have taken home the prize. Very competitive field. My colleagues are working on amazing things at Medtech Innovator, but we are very appreciative for the accolades.
That's great. And yours is an interesting company, and I want to get into it right away and then find out a bit about your background, because most of the folks we've talked to, and I think the other finalists, for the most part, develop devices to help people. You're actually developing a technology that hopefully will help the industry in its problem with sterilization. So before we get into your backstory a bit, introduce our listeners to Phiex Technologies.
Sure. Yes, we definitely are used to being an odd duck in a sense. So Phiex Technologies is helping the industry transition out of ethylene oxide use for terminal sterilization. And how we do that is we have a proprietary self-sterilizing material, which allows medical device makers to sterilize in their manufacturing plant without the use of capital equipment and without relying on third-party facilities. And our materials are light activated, which means now we can actually customize sterilization to you, whether companies want to develop flexible chamber applications of this, or they're looking at integrating it into their existing packaging technology.
So how is this done? What is your technology? So
essentially what our customers see is a form of packaging, right? And how it's applied is, say you have a device you've assembled, you've pouched in your primary packaging, rather than putting it into the shipper box and ultimately the pallet, you can have the option of either dropping it into a pre-made pouch, a number of those, and sealing that, sterilizing it that way under light exposure. Or there are companies that we're working with that are developing ways to put it into their primary packaging. So now you're sterilizing in the primary packaging with the primary packaging. So wow. We're really enabling a paradigm shift, Tom, from what used to be, which is you ask the sterilizer, okay, how many pallets can we fit into your chamber, right? And how many items can we jam on this pallet, to how can we customize the sterilization to our manufacturing line and get the maximum efficiencies there.
So is the sterilization agent, is it the packaging itself, or is the packaging containing something that's doing the sterilizing?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And certainly it takes a bit of time for folks to wrap their heads around, just because it's so different, right?
Thank you for saying that, yes.
As an aside, we work with the best and brightest, including in some of our largest companies in the industry, and everyone, it's just definitely a new way of looking at things. But back to your question, our packaging material is enabled with a dry powder precursor. And so there's no actual sterilant in there. There's a precursor in there. And when it sees the light, it releases a sterilant that's FDA recognized for medical device sterilization. So the delivery system is now no longer a gas chamber in a large third-party facility or a piece of capital equipment. It's the packaging itself.
That's outstanding. I mean, that sounds like a game-changing technology. Where are you in development and testing? Do we know this works? Are you still proving it works? Where are we at?
Yeah, the exciting thing, Tom, is we're going to see the first commercial use of this in medical devices sold out on the market in the U.S. starting next year. And right. We have a number of companies that we're working with, some of the large strategics included, that have a very clear timeline for when they want to implement this or when they want to file their 510K. So we're just in the process of customizing the materials to them, to their lines, and data gathering, not for the purpose of proving feasibility, but for the purpose of them updating their filings with the FDA.
So if I am a company that has a factory that makes, say, surgical staplers, Phiex will put some equipment into my factory that would add this layer of packaging and the sterilization that goes with it. Is that how you're part of the system?
Yeah. If we zoom out a little bit, let's just say you were a catheter maker, right? Mm-hmm. And you can say to us, we did the math, and it makes more sense for us to buy rolls of film from you and convert it ourselves in line.
Okay.
Based off of your volumes, we want pouches to put our devices in. Or, we're going to take a real ambitious shot in the next couple of years and figure out ways to integrate this into our primary packaging. That's what's so time consuming actually about this is now the teams that have traditionally not necessarily had to work together, you can work in your own silos, manufacturing, packaging, sterilization. Now I'm sitting at the table for the first time, and boy, is it exciting.
Wow, that's fantastic. What is the origin of Phiex's technology? And I imagine you have all the necessary patent protection that goes with it.
Yeah. So it's an interesting story, Tom. Actually, this is a company that I had spun out with a client of the previous company that I had founded and run for about 8 years. And what happened is early 2020, I got referred a customer that said to me, hey, I have this self-sterilizing material technology. What do you think about applying it for COVID containment? Right. And this was when COVID was rampaging China. I have family from there. So despite my initial, concern about, I come up from a family of chemists, right? And this is a materials innovation. I've tried very hard, Tom, not to go into the family business, but when we can make an impact in the world, I said, sure, why not? And we actually got a lot of interest from the Chinese FDA, from strategics there. But then the first COVID cases started to crop up in Boston, in the East Coast, where I'm from. And we ran our process with the market here. And I was blown away, Tom. I never expected, and in the years that I had been doing commercialization as a service, I'd never seen such a response. All the medical device makers we spoke to said essentially the same thing, which was, yes, COVID is very impactful to our entire ecosystem, to our entire country and world. There's a lot of people working on this. That said, terminal sterilization of medical devices is critical to us manufacturing and selling devices. We might not be able to make devices in a couple of years. And very few people are working on this. So can we apply this? I looked at the market, called up my now CTO, who incidentally was a former director of research at Baxter at a certain point. I said, we got to do this as a business. He agreed, and here we are.
That's outstanding. And that's the sentiments and concerns that you shared just a moment ago, that we may not be able to make medical devices in a couple of years. I mean, I think we're all sort of talking around the sterilization issue. We all recognize it's a concern, but I don't want to compare it to something like global warming, but there can be a lot of talk about something and nothing is being done about it. And I don't think we've had that kind of conversation about sterilization yet. Could you expand on that a bit? I mean, what are you hearing from companies out there as to how dire a problem this is, and what do you think the outcome could potentially be?
Yeah, so I'm not. I don't like to be in the business of predicting the future, but what I can share with you is the very, very concerning trends that we've noticed, right? And I want to benchmark with what happened in 2019, right? 2019 is when we had the first permanent shutdown of a sterilization plant outside of Chicago, quite a large one. The ripple effect of that is companies lost hospital contracts because they weren't able to fulfill, including some of the big players. You had middle stage commercial losing a lot of money because they didn't have sterile product to sell. Their sterile product was literally stuck in that plant for quite a while. And you had earlier stage companies, I would say sub 50 million. There are many that went under, and we don't talk about those stories because they couldn't put sterile product back, right? So that's what happened in 2019. And overall, in the past couple of years, the stance from our industry has been, yes, that there's data, but we do use noxious chemicals. We can use it responsibly. You can't do away with ethylene oxide, which many of those things are true. I think, unfortunately, from a public safety perspective, if we can't answer the question, will I move my family within a mile of one of these facilities that have been flagged for high cancer risk, we've already lost, I would say, the moral argument, right? But we've seen a very terrifying escalation in what's happening in the past couple months that, frankly, I don't think our industry is quite prepared for. And what I mean by that is now, since August, EPA has put 22% of all of our sterilizers in its crosshairs for being high cancer risk. And then last month, we saw a record-breaking guilty verdict with damages to the tune of $363 million awarded by a jury that were convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that a ETO sterilizer caused a woman's cancer.
Wow.
Very dangerous precedent. And Tom, people in the industry, I was talking with them at Avamed, there's a general misconception that that was a class action lawsuit. That was not. That was a single plaintiff lawsuit.
Wow.
From the first sterilizer that shut down. So here we have on a macro level, EPA just has handed attorneys around the country a plate of all of our sterilizers. We know what happens when law firms see an opportunity to not only make a difference, but to make a handsome profit.
Sure.
And, we could just project forward what's going to happen. That's on the macro level, right? If we go down, I think certainly the large players have been coordinating to respond to this, to share information among them. They have committees internally looking at this. And my sense is that the urgency is there, but it has certainly heightened in the last couple of months. The temperature and the attitude towards this has become dramatically more pessimistic, frankly, from very key people, not only within our industry, but from FDA's perspective, from our trade organizations' perspective. And on the ground, what I'm hearing is companies that are doing even 100, 200 million top line, they're saying, we're seeing 3 to 4x cost increase as we're renegotiating. Companies sub 50 million, we hear this all the time. They come to us and they say, we're being asked to pay the cost of sterilization validation to wait in line for 8 months, 9 months, 10 months. There's no capacity. They're all going down to these smaller scale R&D lines. And then you just got to ask what's going to happen to all of those smaller players, these, pre-commercial or just commercial companies that need sterile product back. There's going to be a major cascade effect. And we're already starting to see the first temporary shutdowns of plants across the country. And as you may know, and our listeners may know, that it's not inconsequential to move to a new sterilizer. You have to go through validation again, and there's a lot of testing that's involved. So even if, Tom, you and I had an ETO plant and I shut down temporarily, so Bob wants to go to you, that's not an overnight process. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of stressed out supply chain folks around the country right now.
As if they needed something else to be stressed out about. Wow, it's an area that I admit I'm been ignorant of, and I've been, as I said, hearing about it and listening to people talk about it, but I hadn't really grasped the enormous implications of what's coming. Is Phiex able to? You can't be the only solution to this. Are you not able to solve all the industry's woes? Are there other companies that are emerging to sort of provide alternatives? Where is the state of your the sterilization industry?
Sure. So as you can imagine, this has been something that the sterilization industry has kept a very, very close eye on. I would say we're probably one of the few companies that haven't traditionally been in the sterilization industry attempting to help this. But we have two major hurdles to overcome to address this problem, right? The first major hurdle is a technical one. There is a small number of chemical sterilants, right? Chemical gas sterilants that are even mechanically feasible with the majority of our devices, right? Radiation, gamma, E-beam, very, very common, very commonly used. ETO is 50% of the market, gamma is about 40, right? Mm-hmm. You can't offload many of the devices currently sterilized with ETO into gamma because gamma is not compatible with the electronics, the sensitive polymers, et cetera, right? So those aren't going to be good solutions. The problem with a lot of other technologies is, if you have to ask a medical device maker to fundamentally change the materials in their device so it's compatible with this new sterilization modality, we're going to have a major issue, right? That's why there's no clear contender at this point. What we're seeing is our sterilant is highly compatible, very gentle because there's no preconditioning, there's no temperature requirements. And then the second piece of it, Tom, is the scalability piece. Right. Traditionally, and how many companies are addressing this, is large chamber and third-party gas facilities, right? Different gas, same facility, same capital equipment. And I think that's very valid. And certainly for products that you can jam thousands and thousands into a chamber and just the unit economics are there, that's a really great solution for those products. Unfortunately, if you think about it, how fast can you build a facility?
Right.
With staffing challenges, even companies that do have existing facilities. I was talking to a colleague in the space who runs a competing business. I remember him telling me when our plant goes online, we're day one, hour one, 24-hour capacity. Done. No additional.
Wow.
Capacity. So I think any solution, there are multiple solutions. There's multiple ways. We are all needed to solve this problem. But fundamentally, anyone who's based in capital equipment or a third-party facility is not going to be able to scale quickly enough to catch up with all of the closures and the havoc that our industry is about to face.
Is Phiex able to help? Do you come into the process only when a new device is leaving the plant, or do you have an ability to sterilize something that's been used in a patient?
Sure, yes. So the interesting thing about our technology, Tom, is it's light activated, but it's on off. So long as you don't expose it to light, fully, so that all of it is activated. If you expose it to light and then shroud it in darkness and expose it to light again, it'll start to release again, right? So there's a lot of flexibility in how we can apply it. There's certainly interest from hospitals for reprocessing. I think the advent of the increased use of technology, particularly in the surgical theater, now we have devices that hospitals can't sterilize and companies don't know what to do with. So there's a lot of interest in that application for sure. I think the opportunity at hand is really to help our entire industry off-ramp from ETO, but certainly reprocessing is on our roadmap.
Let's talk just a bit about you. You mentioned earlier on you didn't want to get into the family business. What business did you want to get into? Was it medical devices or something else?
Yeah, I've come to this quite as a generalist, Tom. So my first business I had started shortly after undergraduate. And over the years, we had developed a small team into commercializing novel technologies and services. So essentially, a company or an inventor would come and say, we have this really interesting product or use case. It could be life-changing, could be world-changing, but we need some support in getting enough of a commercial pipeline to raise our next round of capital. So I really cut my teeth on a couple things. One is this legitimate? And then two, if so, is this something that could make an impact within the next 6 months or a year with enough effort? Or is this a $100 million investment over 15 years' time? And so that's why it was very exciting to see this technology and play out, even though I don't have a specific background in medical device. Our team, as you heard, my co-founder, my CTO's Baxter background at DuPont as well. We have others on the team that are very heavily experienced in packaging. So this is a solution for our industry, essentially by our industry, with a bit of startup fire mixed in.
Amazing. And what do you see well, let's talk for a moment about fundraising. Have you raised rounds of capital? I'm trying to remember the numbers written on the big check that Paul Grand gave you. Was it $350,000? Was that
$350,000? Yeah.
How much have you raised in total at Phiex?
Yeah. So we are fortunate to be well capitalized. We're just closing in on a round this quarter. And you can imagine the amount of inbound interest after that win has been pretty phenomenal. And we have some of the best investors along with us, medical device industry experts, and just folks who really believe that we stand to make a huge impact and make a big difference in the world right now.
Great. And finally, what does your roadmap lead to? What do you see the future of the company being? Is it a standalone company? Do you see an acquisition by one of the strategics? What's the best outcome for you and for your technology? Yeah.
So, just keeping my crystal ball in the corner, I think our entire team is aligned on one very important piece, which is this technology and the solution must exist in the industry. Must, also like an ethical mandate, moral ethical mandate, because it's so pivotal to the future of us being able to save and change patients' lives. So regardless of what path we take from a business standpoint, that has always been our commitment and remains our commitment to be a technology that continues to enable those in our industry that are saving lives.
Well, it's a great story. Congratulations again on the win at Medtech Innovator and at AdvaMed. And it's your timing could not be better. So on behalf of others in the industry, I'm sure we're excited to see what the future holds for you and Phiex. Thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Thanks so much, Tom. Look forward to working with our industry together and to see you again.
All right. Well, that is a wrap. Now is the time for us to tell folks how they can find us out there in social media land. Brian Bunce, why don't you go first? Where can folks find you?
Drug Discover Dev on Twitter, then LinkedIn. I'm the one of only two Brian Bunces, so I'm pretty easy to find.
And Sean Hooley, where can folks find you out there?
You can find me on LinkedIn, SeanWhooley, and same name followed by WTWH, Sean Hooley, WTWH on Twitter.
Excellent. And Chris Newmarker?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Chris Newmarker, just like a Newmarker, and on Twitter @Newmarker. Always happy to connect.
And I'm on Twitter @MedTechTom, and I'm on LinkedIn, Tom Salemi. Please do share this podcast episode on those social media channels and link to all of us. We'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn and on Twitter. And of course, we want everyone to what, Chris Newmarker?
You got to like, follow, subscribe.
Absolutely. Like, follow, and or subscribe to this podcast on those podcast applications that you love so much: Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, et cetera, et cetera. And you won't miss a future episode of Device Talks Weekly or Stryker Talks or Intuitive Talks. They all come through the same Device Talks podcast network. So, all right. Well, that is a wrap. Thanks again, everybody, for sharing your thoughts from last week.
And have a happy Halloween.